Night over the Gulf has become a ledger of two very different contests. One fought in the skies and test ranges of Southern California, and another being settled on the water, where tankers, tolls and seizures are redrawing how power is exercised over one of the world's busiest choke points. They are not separate stories. They are the same campaign playing out across air ranges, ship decks, courtrooms, and factory floors, and the choices made in each domain are already reshaping strategy. On April 1st, 2026, off the Point Mugusi Range in California, a carrier-capable FA-18 Super Hornet launched a new variant of a familiar weapon family. The Navy and industry observers describe the munition as the GBU. 7.5, a long-range variant of the Joint Direct Attack munition, quickly nicknamed the JDAM-LR. In a flight that stretched roughly 200 nautical miles, the kit rode on deployable wings and a compact turbojet, turning a well-proven GPS-guided guidance package into something with the range and maneuverability of a low-cost air-launched cruise option. The test validated propulsion and guidance subsystems needed for standoff missions, essentially giving fourth-generation fighters the ability to carry a greater number of long-range precision weapons without resorting to scarce, expensive cruise missiles. Designers and service officials frame the approach as a pragmatic fix, bridge a gap between short-range gravity munitions and high-end cruise missiles by adapting existing mass-producible guidance kits, adding wings and a small jet to dramatically extend reach. That change in the arc of a bomb is not purely technical, it is doctrinal. For operational commanders, the math shifts when you can field many accurate long-range munitions at a fraction of the per-shot cost of a Tomahawk. Salvo size matters in saturation attacks and in probing layered air-to-air defenses. A dense, lower-cost attack wave looks and behaves very differently to missile interceptors than a handful of high dash value cruise missiles. For a Navy operating in contested littorals, the ability to load carrier air wings with greater numbers of reach weapons changes both how risk is spread and how targets are prioritized. Timing mattered. The Point Mugu trial was not a laboratory curiosity. It happened as American forces were operating under a fragile tactical pause, with Iran that had not settled the larger fight over maritime control. At sea, Tehran has been explicit about turning the Strait of Hormuz into a lever of political and economic pressure, and in late April, Iranian officials signaled the first practical steps toward monetizing that leverage. Deputy Parliament Speaker Hamidreza Hajibabeh said first revenues from transit fees in the Strait of Hormuz have been deposited into the central bank account. That line, deliberately on April 23, 2026, was short, concrete, and deliberately public. It did more than announce a revenue stream, it telegraphed an intent to normalize a new transit red. I'm inspected, screened, and tax passage, rather than the free global flow that underpins energy markets. The Strait carries roughly 1/5 of the world's oil and gas flows. Any sustained interruption ripples through prices, insurance costs, and global trade routes. Turning the Strait into a source of income is a strategic maneuver as much as an economic one. The monetization is matched by kinetic measures. Over recent weeks, US maritime interdiction teams have seized vessels alleged to be moving Iranian crude and channeling funds back to Tehran. In the Indian Ocean, US forces boarded and took custody of a tanker identified in reporting as the MT Tifani, often spelled in press accounts as Tifani or Tafani, which US authorities said carried some 1.9 million barrels of oil. A second vessel, reported as the MT Majestic X, was also interdicted after maritime traffic data linked it to the floating storage and ship-to-ship transfers that have become the backbone of Iran's shadow fleet. Those operations are designed to do one thing: choke off revenue lines that finance military operations. They are blunt instruments of financial pressure that avoid escalating to large-scale ground campaigns, but they are also legally and diplomatically fraught. Boarding a stateless or ambiguously flagged vessel in international waters raises questions about jurisdiction, evidentiary standards, and the rules for using force at sea. The legal filings that follow each seizure will shape precedent on how interdiction can be used in near peacetime. The seals and seizures at sea have not gone uncensored in Washington. Public rhetoric has been stark and unambiguous. President Donald Trump publicly asserted US and Maritime posture, in blunt terms, President Donald Trump said, "We have total control over the Strait of Hormuz. No ship can enter or leave without the approval of the United States Navy. It is sealed up tight until such time as Iran is able to make a deal." A date on April 23, 2026 was intended to project deterrence, to reassure commercial interests, and to send a signal to Tehran that the United States believes it can assert effective denial in the waterway. But words meet reality at sea. Iran has both policy instruments and forces willing to back their claims, from a formalized tolling regime to seizures and mine-laying risks that could make transit dangerous or impossible for many commercial operators. From Tehran's perspective, the maritime campaign is part coercion, part signaling. State outlets and IRGC channels have emphasized resilience, rehearsals, and rapid replenishment of launcher systems. General Majid Musavi, identified in Iranian reporting as the IRGC Aerospace Force commander, posted footage and assessments that sought to broadcast operational endurance and domestic deterrence. General Majid Musavi said, since the ceasefire began on April 11th, the United States has had to bring in ammunition from the other side of the world in a trickle. They have lost this phase of the war as well. They have lost the Strait. They have lost Lebanon, and they have lost the entire region. Whether those claims are borne out by independent assessments is debated within intelligence and defense circles. But the tone is important. Iran is using both kinetic activity and narrative to demonstrate it can endure pressure and keep vital lines of revenue and supply active. Back in the continental United States, another strain has become visible: a production and inventory problem. After weeks of sustained strikes, interdictions, and intercepts, several media reports and defense statements describe rapidly declining stocks of certain precision munitions and interceptors. High-end weapons such as Tomahawk cruise missiles, some classes of interceptors and theater strike systems are expensive to produce and cannot be ramped overnight. The consequences are operationally stark. When high-value weapons are scarce, commanders must shown prioritize targets or seek lower-cost alternatives that can be fielded in volume. Those pressures help explain why work on the JDAM-LR has taken on extra urgency. If expensive cruise missiles are a limited ration, then an affordable, mass-producible standoff munition that uses GPS guidance, wings, and a small propulsion unit becomes strategically attractive. The appeal is plain: reach, GPS-aided accuracy, maneuvering, en route, and a price point that allows sorties to carry numbers rather than single, high-cost punches. But the industrial and operational realities are not simple. Converting automotive or heavy industry production lines to ordnance manufacturing is an old idea with new relevance, and it is harder than it looks. Tooling, explosive safe assembly, quality control regimes, specialized suppliers, software and guidance integration, and strict export controls are not problems that can be solved by turning a factory dial. Officials describe retooling as a complex chain that involves dozens of subcontractors and regulatory approvals. Even with emergency authority, replenishing some critical missile stocks could take months or longer. That friction between battlefield needs and industrial reality is a central feature of modern high-intensity conflict. If production cannot keep pace with attrition, planners must accept hard trade-offs: fewer deep precision strikes, greater reliance on aircraft-delivered munitions that could be carried in larger numbers, or more liberal use of lower-cost loitering systems that favor volume over single-shot precision. Volume-driven tactics also change the targeting calculus. More ordnance in the sky requires more sensors, resilient targeting networks, and reliable battle damage assessment. Long reach does not substitute for quality of intelligence. A JDAM-LR launched at 200 nautical miles is only as useful as the targeting data behind it and the ability to confirm effects afterward. Without those supporting networks, eased reach risks, wasted sorties, and misallocated munitions. At sea, the economics of the passage have been written almost in real time. The claimed imposition of tolls by Tehran and the admission that the first payments have already been banked introduces a new instrument of coercion. Charging passage, restricting routes, so ships must pass through waters where Iran can enforce levies, or simply intimidating carriers into buying safe corridors, or have global economic consequences, rerouting tens of millions of barrels a day, raising insurance premiums, and altering shipping schedules add layers of cost across industries far from the Gulf. Those economic shifts feed back into strategy. Higher freight and insurance costs accelerate efforts by consuming nations to diversify suppliers and routes. They also give Iran a way to turn maritime control into hard cash, offsetting the effects of interdictions elsewhere. In that sense, the sea has become both a battlefield and a bank. The legal front is messy. Each interdiction invites diplomatic pushback, and courts will eventually be asked to adjudicate or at least weigh in on the evidence that underpinned a seizure. Clear chain of custody for cargo manifests, proof of ownership or destination, and adherence to international law are central to making the action sustainable politically. For now, the United States and its partners view seizures as one of the few levers that can choke off funds without widening the conflict into a full-scale, land-based war. How maritime law is interpreted over the coming months will shape what interdiction can or cannot do. Operationally, the combination of new weapon concepts and maritime interdictions is already shaping behavior. Aircraft sorties are being planned with an eye to conserving the highest value missiles, while experimenting with cheaper long-range kits to preserve flexibility. Surface forces are balancing presence with permissive rules for engagement to avoid aside. Nihil escalations. Diplomats are racing to keep insurance and trade corridors open, even as shipping companies reroute and insurers raise premiums. The implications are long-term. If the US premiums, the implications are long-term. If the US premiums and its allies can expand production to field both high-end precision weapons and mid-tier mass munitions, they will keep operational options open and reduce pressure to ration strikes. If the industrial base cannot expand fast enough, commanders will face a grim arithmetic, prioritize the most strategic targets, accept higher risks in contested theaters, and rely increasingly on creative mixes of sensors, loitering munitions, and aircraft-delivered massed effects. For Iran, the calculus is also stark, monetizing the Strait of Hormuz and building a shadow fleet that sustains exports even under pressure are defensive and offensive strategies. At once, they mitigate the pain of sanctions and provide the regime with funds to sustain operations. Public displays of missile reloads and underground lamps. Her activity are meant to tell domestic and foreign audiences that the apparatus of deterrence remains intact. In the weeks and months to come, what matters most will not be a single test or a single seizure. It will be the interplay among three systems: operational choices at sea and in the air, industrial capacity on the ground, and legal diplomatic tools in capitals and courts. The GBU, Liu 7-5 test at Point Mugu was a tactical demonstration of a concept that could change sortie economics. The tolls and tanker seizures in the Indian Ocean are practical moves to cut financing. And the ongoing debate about munitions, stockpiles, and production is the industrial reality check that binds them together. Those three domains, weapons, water, and workshops, are now inseparable elements of a single strategic contest. How decision makers balance cost, reach, and risk will determine whether pressure can be sustained without escalation, or whether scarcity will force harder choices on the battlefield. For now, the world watches satellite feeds and tanker tracks, listens to test range, telemetry, and counts ship-to-ship transfers. The next moves will come from the same mix of pilots, sailors, factory managers, and diplomats that got us here. Each will leave a mark on the balance of power, the cost of conflict, and the fragile networks that keep commerce moving through one of the planet's most consequential waterways.